Welcome to the circular future. In today's fast-paced world, it's becoming clear that businesses and organizations of all shapes and sizes need to prioritize sustainability. It's about taking care of our planet, but it's also key to ensuring long-term success and resilience for businesses. As a result, we're seeing companies set ambitious sustainability targets, whether it's being carbon neutral or net zero by a certain date. The easy part, though, is often setting the targets. The harder part is actioning them within a large, complex organization. And yet, it's necessary for a circular future. My name is Stephanie McClarty, Head of Sustainability at Quantum Lifecycle Partners. And today we're talking about taking these big, beautiful sustainability goals and actually making them happen. Whether we're talking ESG or business in general, a common principle is this: success is 1% vision, 99% alignment. It's critical to know where you want to go, but realizing those goals is all about aligning to them, ensuring your plans, your actions, your people are working coherently towards that vision. Those people could include board members, top management, employees at all levels, and even external partners such as suppliers and customers. And by fostering a culture of sustainability throughout the organization, a unified vision and a shared commitment to making lasting change can be created. But let's be real, it's not always smooth sailing when it comes to achieving these goals. Organizations can run into obstacles like limited resources or lack of awareness or pushback against change. So, how do we action our sustainability goals effectively, both for those who plan the work and those who work the plan? Our guest today has great insight on that. Marie-Hélène Labrie is Senior Vice President and Chief Public Affairs, Communications and Strategy Officer at Cogeco Inc., a role she has held at the telecom and media company since 2018. She has more than 20 years of broad experience in government relations, public communications, and marketing. And prior to joining Cogeco, Marie-Hélène was at Enerchem starting in 2008, where she built the company's corporate image and reputation, positioning the organization as a global in the field of biofuels. So welcome to the podcast, Marie-Hélène.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. And I've worked for a long time with Cogeco. I know you're a leader in sustainability. And please tell us, what are the goals and targets at Cogeco when it comes to ESG?
So first of all, I should say that Cogeco started its ESG journey over 10 years ago. So we've been diligently and progressively making progress in terms of our commitments to ESG. We're really driven by the importance of ensuring inclusive growth and sustainable growth, and also ensuring that our business is resilient. So we have that long-term view approach. And also that comes also from our, I would say, founders who always had this vision of long-term growth. And we also have a long tradition of stakeholder commitment, community involvement, as well as philanthropic leadership. So I would say the S of ESG has always been an important part of our priorities and commitments. So it became quite natural for us to start from that position and really evolve our ESG approach and strategy. So today, of course, environmental commitments, climate action is becoming, I would say, even stronger, and we're putting more focus on that. And on the governance side, of course, this has always been something very important for the company. And we've taken a very transparent approach in terms of our commitments as well. We've been recognized by leading ESG voices and in terms of our commitments, environmental transparency, etc. So we are continuing on this journey. And as you're saying, we have to establish the targets and we have to take actions to achieve those targets. So in terms of targets, we have environmental related targets that are associated with our greenhouse gas emissions. So emission reductions targets. Also from an environmental standpoint, we're also focusing on ensuring we can also ensure we have a sustainable way of managing our waste. We also have targets with regards to social objectives, including diversity and inclusion, for example, and on the governance side of things as well. And the way we develop those targets is we do on a biannual basis a materiality assessment to identify those key material topics for our stakeholders. And we survey our customers, our employees, our investors, our suppliers, etc. And we identify those material topics. And this year, we also did a double materiality assessment. So looking at both sides of things, the impact we have, but also we can have on our stakeholders, but also how, for example, climate change has an impact on us as well. So the inward and outward approach. So we usually identify 10 material topics, and we have very specific targets associated with those targets that we keep track of. And we have those commitments with specific KPIs, and we keep track of those on a quarterly basis to see how we're progressing. Some are longer term, like our environmental targets, and others are more annual.
And you've set some big targets. You've set a net zero target. You've also set some targets around your suppliers. Can you tell us a little bit more about those specific targets?
Yes, for sure. Yeah. So we updated our environmental targets 2-3 years ago, and we basically established short-term, medium-term, and longer-term targets in terms of, and we established those for scope 1, 2, and 3. So if I look at scope 1 and 2, our emission reduction targets, we want to reduce those targets by 65% by 2030. This is versus 2019. And in terms of our scope 3, we have two parts. One of them is a short-term objective of having 50% of our suppliers by spend covering goods and services and capital goods that will set their own scope 1 and 2 emission reduction target by 2025. We also have for scope 3 the objective of reducing emission from sold products as well as employee commuting by 30% by 2030. So that's a lot of numbers, and we have the 2025 and we have 2030. So we have short term and medium term, and the longer term is our net zero emissions by 2050, covering all our scopes. And the final one from a climate change mitigation and adaptation standpoint is also from a renewable energy standpoint. Our target is to have 100% of our energy consumed from electricity use from renewable sources by 2030. So those are ambitious targets, which we agreed on as an executive team, which we documented, and the way we established those was really doing some kind of a bottom up, what can be done, and kind of a top down to see what is feasible. We are not in an industry that is a large emitter industry. So telecom industry is also even enabling the digital economy, which can really reduce transportation emissions, for example, by allowing all of us to do remote work and things like this. So somehow we know that key elements for us, key levers for us to achieve those will go through the electrification of our fleet, for example, but also the purchase of renewable energy. And we have used renewable energy credits, RECs, in the past, and will continue to do so, but we're moving into an approach where we will be more proactively promoting renewable energy and the use of renewable energy by investing in renewable energy projects. through virtual power purchasing agreement, for example. So this allows really to have the added additionality in terms of the production of energy.
Right.
So this is also an important piece. And working with our suppliers, we already started that. We already have about more than 25% of our suppliers who have committed to have also their scope 1 and scope 1 and 2 as well. So this is going well. But on scope 3, we also need to take into account the fact that we started the work with our large suppliers, and maybe that's the easy part. But when you work with small, medium enterprises, SMEs, it may be a little bit more difficult for them to also have the same types of commitments. So we're really approaching them, and really we want to share our own experiences and really support them with maybe, workshops, and maybe join forces with our peers in the industry. So we've engaged with other industry, with our peers, and to work together with our suppliers.
That's amazing. And just if folks aren't aware, scope 1 emissions would be your direct emissions from natural gas or the burning of fuel in your fleet. Scope 2 being the emissions from electricity, and scope 3 being your supply chain emissions, which is a big, broad topic. And that leads me to a question, which is, when you have mapped this out, I know you have a climate action roadmap. How did you decide as an organization what to focus on first? Because I noticed that you've got targets basically every 5 years or so of working on different aspects. How did you prioritize what to work on?
So that's a good question. I guess my team, the ESG team, is really kind of our center of excellence, and so they do all the thinking, but they do work with our business units to identify how much energy we're using in certain areas. You have to realize that we operate in both Canada and the US. We operate in 13 states in the US and in Quebec and Ontario. So the reality in Quebec, where we have hydroelectricity, and maybe Ohio, where the electricity mix and the energy basket is not as green, is quite different. So we had to identify those at the beginning of this process, and integrate kind of the growth profile of the company. So doing all that modeling using the GHG protocols that are in place, so that we can really quantify and project where the business as usual would take us, and really identify the levers that would allow us to reduce our emissions, and then identify what is feasible. I think that the most difficult part from me, for example, if I look at the fleet electrification initiative, for example, the most difficult part is the timing of those vehicles being available for us from a procurement standpoint. So when we started working on that a few years ago, we were expecting those models to be available quicker. So we had to adjust and focus more on fuel efficiency rather than fleet electrification in the short term, because so we had to kind of, even though we had fuel efficiency initiatives, we had that for many years, we had to double down on these and look at what we could do further, given that in terms of electrifying the fleet, some of the models we need were not available until a year or two. So we need to be agile. We need also to work with consultants. So we did work with external consultants to really help us with our fleet electrification strategy as well, given that we have technicians that are on the road. We operate in rural areas as well. How can we optimize this? Understanding that the autonomy of some of the electric cars will be different than the cars we use today. So how do we optimize this? So it's a team effort, and relying also on external expertise. And at the end of the day, having an executive team that is committed and set the tone, from the top is important. Yeah, so I think that's important. And maybe an important decision we made as well is to include those targets as part of our financing as well. So we established a sustainability linked loan over a year ago. So basically, the money we are borrowing is based on us achieving our targets over 3 years for our emission reduction, as well as other digital inclusion objectives. So, and this shows that we're putting concrete actions and demonstrating that we're very serious about it, because we are going to be impacted on the interest rates if we don't achieve those targets. So, and this is another way to really demonstrate externally, but also internally, that we're serious about it. We also included in the executive compensation targets that are related to us achieving some of our initiatives that are key to achieve our emission reduction targets. So this is really, all these actions are really all interrelated, but they're not easy at the same time, because there's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of things we do not control. So we have to make sure when we establish those that we can link to things that are more under our control.
Sure.
For example, electricity intensity, the carbon intensity of electricity in certain states will vary from one year to another. So if we start the year with a certain assumption based on the published data, and during the year, if those change and they're not as good, well, this is out of our control. So we should not, for example, maybe base our executive compensation factoring in those numbers that could change over the years. So we had to kind of adjust our approach when it comes to, for example, executive compensation linked to our environmental actions, so that they can be fair and they can be really driving actions and not like something that is totally out of your control. So we're learning as we go. I think we're not looking for perfection. And I think that's a message we're sending internally. I think at the end of the day, we need to remain focused on our ultimate objective, but the path to get there will not be a straight line. And but as long as we're going in the right direction, I think that's what's important.
Yeah. So that, do what you can. Don't worry about being perfect. I think that's an important message. As you say, we've dealt with so many variables and change in these last few years. And I'm really curious about how you have really gotten all of your employees on board. It sounds like there's been some incentives perhaps for certain employees and messaging. How have you really communicated the message throughout Cogeco, knowing that it's a large company operating in 2 countries? How did you get that buy-in from everyone?
So I think it was progressive. And I think there's a lot of education internally, but there's also the ambassadors from the business unit, and building that group of ambassadors and key leaders and champions for those initiatives. And a lot of those initiatives just make sense. They will help us be more cost efficient as well. So it's, having the business cases also presented, having the champions internally, having their buy-in, and as we go, having those structured approach to support everyone and work together. For example, our procurement team plays an important role as well in this, the presidents of our business units, and we have a steering committee which meets every quarter to really review that. We review our progress and our commitments and actions. If we see that maybe for certain initiatives we may be a little bit behind, we're trying to kind of adjust and see how can we help, how can we maybe adjust a little bit our approach, for example. So the monitoring ongoing, the support, ensuring that the momentum. We also have the board, which plays also an important role. Board members are also are involved in our annual review of the strategy, but also on a quarterly basis, reviewing our progress. So it's a collective effort. And, I think education, support from identifying the key leaders and ambassadors and champions, and ensuring that we have the opportunities to meet on a regular basis and to identify as we monitor progress identify how we need to adjust and work jointly together. Yeah.
Yeah. We're noticing an uptick in the number of questions we get from our customers and our suppliers from folks in departments that are not sustainability, but they're asking us what we would consider to be traditional sustainability questions, such as scope 3 emissions, asking for our data or information around scope 3. And we think this is really interesting. Do you think it's the evolution where it doesn't really matter what role you're in, this will be part of your role, is somehow like linked to sustainability and these broader goals like scope 1, 2, or 3 emissions?
Yeah, absolutely. I think an ESG team will be the catalyst, will be the center of excellence, and will have the expertise to really support the vision and the strategy, the buy-in from the executive, and then really the key champions can be procurement, can be the teams in the field supporting our customers, the way we manage our waste, for example. So you have champions across the organization that play an important role. So, and I think as people understand more and more the implications, I think it becomes really the accountability is now across the organization rather than really within the ESG team. So that's what we've been working on as well. And I think that's really key. Diversity and inclusion is also a key element of ESG when you look at the S.
Absolutely.
And that's really across the organization. You may have a group that will lead this. In our case, it's our HR group, but it can sit, different place in the organization. But the accountability and the responsibility is across the organization to make sure we continue fostering an inclusive workplace and that we stimulate diversity. So that's an example as well. So sustainability at large. So leaders understand their role, I think, more and more. And I think that's really important. In the future, our leaders will all be sustainable leaders as well.
And what would you say? What advice would you give to business managers, leaders, or frankly, even frontline employees as they're working with this new realm for them? It's perhaps out of their traditional area of expertise. How should they position themselves for success? Is it about educating themselves on this?
Well, I think first of all, when we look at sustainability is about taking an approach where I would call it's the stakeholder capitalism. So it's really looking at what's important, not only for our shareholders, but really for all our stakeholders. So when you look at your customers, data privacy, for example, is becoming really top of mind for customers from an ESG standpoint, and the impact that those can have on the reputation. So I think leaders of tomorrow need to be more and more aware of the importance of a very holistic approach when it comes to managing and taking decision, and that the environmental impact of our decision today or for tomorrow as well. So we need to be to realize the importance of the impact we have today in our decision. But I think it requires education as well. And we all need to educate ourselves. And I think working with others and establish commitments, I think forces us to measure progress. So if you have targets, you will have to measure your progress and you'll have keep certain KPIs because you've established targets. I think that makes a difference as well for leaders when they know there are these, targets. They need to be achievable, realistic, but at the same time, they need to be ambitious. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you've mentioned that you're also working with suppliers in terms of measuring, even reducing scope 1 and 2 emissions. How have you gotten the buy-in from your suppliers or vendors?
So the way we approach that is we first work with the largest ones and engaging with them. We send them a letter informing them of our commitment and that we wanted to work with them. So several of the large suppliers we have were already engaged and about to also submit their emission target with the Science-Based Target Initiative, because we were the first telecommunication company in Canada to have its emission reduction approved by Science-Based Target Initiative. So we could also offer our support as we had gone through the work, and we could share our experience. So we really took that approach of collaboration, working together, and informing them of our objective. So the second step was really to look at, other suppliers and also work with them. So we really are taking one step at a time, and now we're getting into smaller and smaller suppliers. And this is where working with our peers in the industry can be interesting. Join forces to really educate and support all our supplier base, we believe can be very important. We can also work with associations and others who are supporting SMEs to achieve their own objectives and set their own targets. So I think that creates some kind of a movement as well to really establish targets and move forward all together. Yeah,
that makes sense. What have some of the challenges been regarding working with suppliers? I would imagine some are, they might have the data, others do not. It's new for them. How has the challenges been?
So the smaller ones, it's a bit more challenging. And so I think providing support, and we said our objective is 50% by 2026. So, and we are over 25 right now. So we're kind of halfway. So, but I think, for these suppliers, I think it will take a little bit more time, but at the end of the day, I think we're making, progress and the small steps at a time. We're in 2023 now, so we still have a few years ahead of us. Yeah.
Well, progress, not perfection, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And to finish this off, what would one piece of advice be that you would give to business managers or leaders who are fairly new to sustainability and trying to understand this and their role in it? What would you say to them?
Well, I think, first of all, it makes business sense to engage in a process to build a sustainable business. And from an environmental standpoint, if you look at our objective, I think more and more customers are looking for companies that are environmentally responsible, that are taking actions. We know we all have to take action. So I think it will become more and more important for our customers as well, our partners. And when you own suppliers, also starting to ask questions, and people from a sustainable procurement standpoint. So I think it creates those movement. And more, I think governments will also request from their own suppliers that they have established some, targets. We're starting to see that also from a human rights standpoint, that, there will be more and more pressure from everyone to ensure that the whole supply chain takes into account human rights. So I think it's a movement. And I think for businesses, it makes sense to start on this journey and ensure that they can be sustainable. And the environmental impact, climate change is there, and there are risks and opportunities that need to be evaluated. And I think the opportunities are quite interesting as well from a cost standpoint, because energy costs will increase, carbon offset, renewable energy credits, everything will get more and more expensive. So companies need to get on board and develop a vision and identify their levers so that they can really take actions.
Yeah, absolutely. And now is the best time to start, because it is a journey. And I've heard that throughout this podcast is, get started on the journey, progress over perfection, educate, set yourself up for success. And I know Cogeco is definitely doing that. So thank you so much, Marie-Hélène, for being here today.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
That was such an interesting conversation. Join us next time and head on over to quantumlifecycle.com/podcast, for more podcasts and follow us wherever you get your podcast from. This is a Quantum Lifecycle podcast. The producers are Sanjay Trivedi and Faiza Govani. That's it for today. We'll see you next time.